This time, we will configure additional LAN segments, add SecureNet, DMZ, and ManageNet to the router. First step is we're going to create the VMs, add switches, and configure network adapters. Open the Hyper-V Manager. Click the Windows icon. Type Hyper-V on the search bar. Right-click and run as administrator. Enter the admin username and password, then click Yes. Choose the current host name in the Hyper-V Management Console. Please take a look, there's no VMs are listed. Click on the Windows icon and begin typing PowerShell. Keep going until the correct app is shown. Run it as administrator. Enter the username and password, then click Yes. Type CD space C / and press Enter to navigate to the root of C. Type CD bis and press the Tab key. Pressing Tab uses autocomplete to select a folder that begins with those letters. As it happens, there's only one folder that starts with BIS, so PowerShell does what then we want. Type POW and hit the Tab key. Then press Enter. That takes us to the folder with the PowerShell scripts we need. Next, begin typing the name of the script we want to run. The script's name begins with more. Pressing Tab calls on autocomplete to fill in the rest. You may notice it adds a / in front. Run the script that creates the administration VM. Press Enter to run the script. Once that script is done, run the script that creates the administration VM. The script name starts with admin. Conveniently, it is the only script in the folder that starts with admin. Type in those letters, press Tab and press Enter. Navigate back to the Hyper-V Manager window. Take a look at the network settings for the more_segments_outer VM. It has 5 network interface cards. The MAC addresses of those cards are listed in the instructions. In our virtual infrastructure, cards with particular MAC addresses are virtually wired to plug into specific switches defined in Hyper-V. This is the virtual equivalent of connecting the Ethernet ports from NICs on the router into the uplink ports on a collection of switches. When you feel clear about the network settings, go ahead and start the router's VM and click Start. Set the zoom level to something that works for your screen. We set it to 75% in the video. While the router is booting up, you can also start the admin machine. This VM runs Ubuntu, which is one widely used version of Linux. As with the router VM window, we set the zoom level to 75% in the video. The optimal zoom for you may be different. It takes a minute or two for the virtual machines to start. As the router boots up, it lists various services and processes. Watch for familiar network functions. When the Ubuntu VM is ready to go, a login screen appears. When the Ubuntu VM is ready to go, a login screen appears. Log in as the user isadmin01 using the password adminpass. This is not a good password. This kind of password probably should not be allowed in a production environment, especially for a machine used by an IT administrator. But this is just a lab, and we want passwords that students can type reliably. Even as passkeys and cryptography are increasingly used in production, strong passwords matter. Click on the Firefox icon. We will use the browser to access the router's web configurator. pfSense has been set up to expose this management interface on the IP address 10.0.1.1. Open that address in the browser window. The pfSense graphical user interface will pop up. This time log in with the username admin and the password pfSense. This is an even weaker username and password because it is the pfSense default. You can find this password on the internet in a few seconds. Responsible network administrators change default passwords and control access to the management consoles of network devices like routers. Changing the password is very nearly the first thing you should do in a real situation. Hackers constantly scan the internet for open consoles. Numerous serious and recent breaches have occurred because network administrators failed to protect the management console for a networking device. Use the hamburger menu to navigate to the Interfaces submenu. Click on Interfaces and choose Assignments. You will see two existing interfaces, one for the wide area network and another for the local area network. An additional network port is also shown. Click Add. Then click Add twice more to make the other two network interfaces available for configuration. They happen to come up in a convenient order for completing the steps in the lab. But in practice, a network administrator would need to pay close attention to the MAC addresses so that the right configurations are assigned to the ports that will be plugged into the right switches. Once all 5 interfaces show as in the instructions, click the Save button. Step 6. Configure the DMZ segment. Click on the link for the Opt1 segment. That takes you to a screen where you can enable and name the DMZ interface. Tell it that this interface will be configured to use a static IPv4 address. Enter the address as 10.0.2.1/24 and save it. You also need to tell pfSense to apply the changes as shown. Navigate to the settings for the DHCP service using the hamburger menu. Choose the Services submenu and the DHCP server option. Click on the DMZ link. Click to enable DHCP on this interface. Then specify the first and last addresses to be used in the DHCP pool. 10.0.2.3 to 10.0.2.99. Once you have it, click the Save button. In Steps 7 and 8, you will configure the interface and DHCP settings for the other two network segments. The NIC for the OPT2 interface is plugged into the SecureNet switch. Click there. Enter the interface name and click in the Enable checkbox. Choose the static IPv4 configuration type. Enter 10.0.3.1 as the IP address and a bit count of 24. Save and apply the changes. Navigate to the setting for the DHCP service. Choose to work on the SecureNet settings. Enable DHCP. Set the DHCP pool range to 10.0.3.3 to 10.0.3.99. Click Save. Now set up ManageNet. It uses OPT3 and has 4 as the third octet in its IP addresses. By default, pfSense will not let network traffic flow in and out of new segments. Its built-in firewall blocks most everything. In Step 9, we will create a few rules so the network segments can be used. Much more needs to be said about firewall rules, but this is not the time. Using the hamburger menu, navigate to the firewall menu and its rules option. Choose the DMZ segment. Click Add to add a firewall rule. Go to the bottom and save the rule. While this rule might not be a good idea in a real environment, it is fine for our purposes in this lab. When offered the chance, apply the changes. Proceed to create similar rules for the secure net and manage net interfaces. That completes the changes we plan to make to the router configuration. But let's do two more things. Let's see that the updated interfaces show on the pfSense console. And let's access the administrative interface to the router from the ManageNet segment. Click into the router's VM window. It shows only two interfaces. Press Enter to reset the menu, and you will see all 5 segments with their names and their IP address ranges. The purpose of the ManageNet segment is to allow network administrators to access the administrative console from a restricted network segment. We aren't going to make all the changes needed to restrict access, but we are going to show that we can access the web configurator from a machine on the ManageNet segment. This part of the exercise will let you practice a couple of things you have done, and will introduce a new enhanced type of VM. Navigate to the PowerShell window on the Windows 11 VMware host. If you closed it, you can open it again. Begin typing the word manage. Just the first 3 letters is enough. Use the Tab key to auto-complete the PowerShell script name. Press Enter. A new VM has appeared in Hyper-V Manager. Start it up, it runs Ubuntu. You can check its settings, and you will see that its virtual network card is plugged in the ManageNet switch. Lower the resolution for the connection to 800 by 600 and click Connect. This extra step is related to how you are connecting to this VM as an enhanced session. Login using isadmin01 and adminpass. Sometimes we want to be able to copy and paste between virtual machines or share other resources. Enhanced session mode can help. It takes a few moments for the machine to start up. In enhanced mode, Hyper-V uses Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP, to connect to the VM instead of directly sharing its screen and keyboard. RDP supports functions such as copy and paste, sound, and sharing of USB drives. Once it opens, you can verify it is using an enhanced session. Start Firefox. It takes a moment. VM performance can be adjusted. We added swap files in our Ubuntu setup to speed things up a bit. We could do more by allocating more RAM in VMware. But if we did, we could not operate as many concurrent lab sessions without paying for more equipment. This time we will use the IP address 10.0.4.1 to access the pfSense GUI. Digital certificates help secure networks. Browsers verify that digital certificates for sites they open are recognized by an approved certificate authority. Our router does not have an approved certificate. It takes time and money to set those up. We thought you should see this even though we prevented messages from coming up in earlier exercises. To open the router's interface, even though its certificate is not recognized, click Advanced. Then scroll down and accept the risk. Log in with user admin and password pfSense. Go to the router VMs window. It displayed the new login from 10.0.4.3. Go to the router VMs window. It displayed the new login from 10.0.4.3. That is the first available IP address in the configured DHCP pool range for the managed net segment.